christiangeekcentral.com. Do you like games? I like games too. I like games too.
Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to part 11 of my bookshelf tour, still based on footage taken from my bookshelf at our old house, because my bookshelf hasn't been completely reconstituted in our new house. So I left off looking at some 360 video games. We might even get into some PS4 stuff today. We'll see. We're just going to see how much I can get through talking about in 10 minutes. So here we go. Boom. Lost Odyssey. Okay, this is a turn-based RPG for the Xbox 360. It was among the first games that I bought for that system. It has a lot in common with Shadow Hearts, which I really love the combat system in Shadow Hearts, which is turn-based but still has this, reflex or hand-eye, or more of a timing, I would say, mechanism involved in executing, the moves in combat. I don't like it near as much as the spinning dial in Shadow Hearts, but I think it's a pretty good second. I still haven't finished this game. I do fully intend to. It's just I'm not always in the mood for a turn-based RPG, especially a Japanese RPG. I'm close to the end on this game, actually. I just need to do some serious level grinding, which, level grinding of the same enemies over and over and over again. It's a bit unfortunate, So anyway, it's not one that I can recommend to everybody. But of the JRPGs that I've played, it definitely has a much more serious tone overall than the vast majority of them, and I really appreciate that. But I do get tired of old JRPG conventions, like having to talk to everyone in town in order to trigger game advancement. Limited save points is also an annoyance, and the anime style voice acting and silly characters. Though, as I said, still mostly a serious game. So it's in my collection, and that's why it stays in my collection. But it's not one I'm super excited about. Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Now I still haven't finished this one. I got halfway through it once, and I hit a wall with like a side-scrolling platforming section that was unlike the rest of the gameplay, where if you fall, you have to go and start the whole thing over again, and I just hate that kind of gameplay. So I actually got rid of it for a while, and then years later I bought it again really cheap, just to kind of have as a game to play with other people when they come over, or maybe to play with my boys now at this point. But I love Diablo clones, and I love superheroes. So as long as I can, maybe get through that side-scrolling part again once we reach it, then that'll be fine. Let's see. I do hack away at this a little around once a year, maybe. I last left off in a swimming level. Yay! So that wasn't very fun for me, so that's why I kind of last put the controller down on this one. I would like to finish it someday, but, maybe just doing couch co-op with my boys, I don't know if by itself, just me playing it by myself, it's ever going to be a real draw for me like it used to be. Portal 2. Now, I am not a fan of puzzle games, but I got on a streak with Portal 1 and 2 years ago. Discovered how much I enjoyed the first one, which I own digitally, and then bought this one, and I think loved it even more. The story elements were great, and they were the main thing actually that drove me forward, understanding this world and the stories, and what was going on with this weird AI that was leading me through the tests in the first game. Is this AI broken? And then slowly the true state of things begins to be revealed, and the second one went much further, revealing more and more of the world and the characters and stuff and the powers that be. Now and then a puzzle would kind of frustrate me, and I'd just look it up because, I just don't like puzzles all that much. But otherwise, it was such a great experience, and it, I have to admit, it was satisfying when I found the solution to each puzzle. You have that little moment where you feel smart, Sacred 2 Fallen Angel. Okay, this is an open-world Diablo clone. Tons of story text to read if you want in the numerous quests. I don't read any of it. I just follow the waypoints to kill, loot, and upgrade. It's kind of stuttery in terms of its frame rate on Xbox 360. There's some ugly, bland models here and there, but the looting/upgrade cycle is great, for my taste anyway. And instead of like swarming monsters, which you see a lot in Diablo 3 and in other Diablo clones that have come about since Diablo 3 or around the same time as Diablo 3. Instead of like these swarming monsters, each monster has more threat and significance. Like the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games and the Champions of Norath game on the PlayStation 2. Yes, there are groups of enemies still, but not like these swarms that to me just at some point feels like a real-time strategy game instead of like an action RPG. I played a bit of several classes in this game, Sacred 2, a while back. The controls took a little getting used to. They felt weird to me. They still, every once in a while, feel like, oh, this is a little bit weird and not intuitive at all. And so I just kind of lost interest, but then recently I came back to it to give it another try, and for some reason, something clicked. It just totally hooked me like never before. It was like a return to those non-swarmy Diablo clones, that I mentioned, Champions of Norath and Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. I did turn off the voice acting. The script and the voice acting is sometimes intentionally cheesy, and it can get some good laughs out of me, but a lot more hits than misses for me in the laughs department, so I ended up eventually just turning the voice acting off. All right, Saints Row the Third. After running out of open-world RPGs, I started exploring open-world action games. Which I used to not touch action games, but slowly over time, starting with BioShock, I slowly started dipping my toe more and more into the world of action games because of difficulty settings that would allow someone with my crappy skills to still get through them and enjoy them. So after running out of open world RPGs, started exploring open world action games, and this might have been the first. With all the XP and cash earning elements, it's basically an action RPG, but it does have some story missions requiring action skills. Those were frustrating at times, but totally worth it for me for all the open world fun that I had. The world is a bit bonkers, but still just grounded enough to scratch my itch to fantasize about doing ridiculous, almost superheroic feats in the real world. I cannot recommend this game to nearly anyone I know personally, as most would be really put off, disgusted, or possibly even morally compromised by some of the crass, sexually themed content in the game. It's not like a constant barrage of that kind of content, but it's peppered throughout the game experience. I even put the game away myself for a while because of issues related to that kind of thing, but I found I was okay to come back to it later when I was just kind of in a different season spiritually. So to sum up, I love playing this game, and yet I don't necessarily recommend that you give it a try. Singularity. Now, this is considered to be a BioShock knockoff by many, at least it was at the time of its release. I discovered it years after the BioShock trilogy had ended, with no more BioShock games planned for release. In that space, where no BioShock games are coming, a BioShock knockoff suddenly looks pretty good. It's a first-person shooter with some light puzzle solving centered on time displacement, a time displacement gadget, which would be in place of kind of like the powers and abilities you would have in a BioShock game. And you can use these time displacement gadget powers to reverse or advance the flow of time on enemies or objects. This makes for some really cool possibilities both in and out of combat. Time travel is also involved, as you can imagine. If you enjoyed BioShock, I highly recommend giving Singularity a try. Star Ocean: The Last Hope. I tried starting this a couple times without success. I bought it really cheap when I was in a JRPG phase a few years ago, but the anime-style characters and voice acting just killed it for me really quickly. I imagine it will be joining my sell pile pretty soon. Two Worlds. Now, I just finished releasing a 4-part playthrough series for this game back in September, which you can check out on this channel. Of all my games, this may be the irritating game that I love most. It's one of my favorite open-world action RPGs for its looting, crafting, and progression systems. But on the 360, the graphics are bland, the frame rate can get crazy choppy, especially when you go into dungeons, it crashes, numerous quests are broken and unable to be completed, the dialogue is weird, and the voice acting done by the development staff instead of actual voice actors. It's largely kind of a mess, but I love the gameplay system so much that I've actually played it twice now, and it's been well worth pushing past the downsides both times. Check the description below if I remember to put a link there for a link to part 1 of my playthrough of that series. Two Worlds 2. Also, a good open-world, third-person action RPG. It has better graphics, better writing, better voice acting, but the revamped crafting and magic systems kind of sucked a lot of the fun out of it for me. I didn't like them as much as I did the first one. It did review a lot better than the first one, and I definitely enjoyed it, but not as much as the first game by far. All right, we are finally moving into PS4 games, just really briefly. We'll just barely get started on them. Starting with Dragon Quest Builders. Now, I reviewed this game when it came out and really enjoyed it at first. The collecting and crafting was really working for me. I enjoyed the Dragon Quest trappings. I don't have a ton of nostalgia for the series, but some. So, the artwork, the enemies, the music, and the sound effects are all very true to that series, as that series has remained very consistent in those elements throughout. So they carried that over even into this type of game that was totally different gameplay from the main Dragon Quest series. It's like a Minecraft type of, knockoff, but with smoother graphics and a lot more polygons. But eventually, I did lose consistent interest with this game. I took almost a year away from it after getting more than halfway through, and then came back and finished it. I don't know exactly why the hook wasn't as strong near the end. in some ways, I wanted more freedom to just explore and survive in kind of an open, craftable world. But when given an option like that in the post game, I quickly lost interest without having goals and rewards. So I'm not sure what I want. I didn't want to have to learn crafting recipes through monotonous experimentation, and yet I didn't feel like having all the recipes in the post-game world made that experience better. Maybe if something about the survival gameplay would have been different, I'm not quite sure why I kind of lost interest in this. I got enough interest when coming back to it, to finish it off, but it wasn't like my one main game that I was totally just kind of into, forsaking all others until it was done. I will probably buy the second one when it comes out in the US because I did enjoy the first one enough, but it wasn't the Minecraft with more polygons that I kind of had hoped it would be. So anyway, okay, that's it. That's all I have time for. Next time we will pick it up and I will talk about Dragon Age Inquisition. I definitely have some opinions about that, so hopefully you'll join me for that next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.